Hello everyone, it is Sunday night. It is not 9 o'clock, but it's close enough, and we are here at Bat City Comic Professionals, which means it is time to wind down your weekend. We are going to talk about all the latest and greatest of this week's small press and indie books, go over what they're all about and why you should be reading them. As always, I'm your host Shannon, aka Small Press Shann, here to just get excited about comics with you, and I am definitely going to do that a lot tonight. Usually at this point I would tell you what wine I'm drinking, but we have a special guest in town. We have one of our Bat Fam members from back when we very first opened up in Austin staying with us, and so because we are going to go out and show him the town in just a little bit, we are coming to you a little bit early, but also I'm not going to drink, just in case. So, but I am going to drink some Topo Chico, and if you don't know Topo Chico, you've never lived in Austin, Texas, for one. But this is, it's just a nice mineral water. It's one of my favorite, like, sparkly beverages. I can't have any, like, sodas or coffees or anything with caffeine in it. So I have obsessions with different kinds of water. And this is probably one of my favorites for sure. But anyway, I'm going to take a drink really fast just to get started. And now I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, it's so good, and I'm not going to want to do anything but drink the water. I have not had a lot of Topo Chico since we moved to Florida, and so whenever I get one, I'm very excited. So that's why it's like special water night for the live stream, since I'm not drinking wine. I'm going to share our stream so everybody knows we're talking comics. Come join us. It's going to be so much fun. All right. And then I'm going to move that over so we have room to put down all the comics. So we had a great week at Bat City with superhero story time, and so many great, cool things came in this week. Oh my gosh, we had some amazing new books coming. So if you're in the area, you're definitely going to want to stop by this week as all those things slowly make it to the floor. And we had our awesome mega sale, and we really appreciate everybody who came out. All the people who were like, I'm not going to MegaCon, I need something to do. We were like, let's have the sale and come hang out with us. And we got to hang out with a lot of people, got to meet a lot of new people this week, so it was really awesome. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Coming up this week, there's stuff that's happening. This Wednesday is our adult comic creation workshop. We're calling it Teen Plus because if you are 15, 16 years old and you want to join us, just like those Marvel comics that say Teen Plus that you can pick up off the shelf, this is definitely a place where you can come learn how to write your own comics and learn just a little bit more about that writing process to get you excited about whatever it is you're writing. That is this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Come join us. And then this Saturday at noon is going to be our Story Spelunkers meetup for this month, I believe. And then Saturday night at 7 p.m. we are having our Bat City takeover of Ascura because Matt Live is playing at Ascura this Saturday. It opens at 7 o'clock, so come on over. He's going to be the first one to play. And there is a couple of bands in between. Matt, do you remember? I know Idle Moves is one of them. Who is the other band in between you and that headline? Georgie. So it's Matt and then Georgie and then Idle Moves and then our good friends and some Bat Fam members from the Losing Game are the headliner that night. So we're going to have a Bat City takeover. If you come to the show, find me. I'm going to have some free comics that I'm going to be handing out. And if you come to Bat City anytime the week after the show and you bring either your wristband or proof of purchase of something from Ascura that night during that show, you're going to get 10% off. So come pack the house for not just Matt, but everybody else. I know everybody comes to see Matt, and that's super cool, but stay for all the other bands. Find, just like here where we're like, find your new favorite comic, come find your new favorite band. You're going to have 4 amazing acts you can hear that night. Again, that's this Saturday, February 10th. I almost said May 10th because that's what I'm scheduling right now. February 10th and at 7 p.m. So come join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until then, let's have a lot of fun talking about some comics. So we're going to kick it off with The Dead Lucky, issue 11 from Image and the Black Market Narrative imprint. This is a part of your massive verse. So if you are reading Radiant Black, you know that there are some books that go in conjunction with it. They're more of companion series than crossovers, though. This is one of them. This is about a girl who was a squadron leader in the military, and her entire group gets taken out and she's the only one that survives, and she has a lot of PTSD, and because of that, she's able to see the dead that she lost, that she left behind, and they are kind of the ones that fuel all of the decisions she makes. And she ends up taking on this massive, essentially like mech suit kind of situation, and she's kind of become a superhero for her town, which she comes back to and finds is being overrun by corporations. We're 11 issues in at this point, so while she's done all that, there's been a lot of twists and turns, and in this arc of the story, we have found that she's seeing that there's more to what she thought was just visiting ghosts and the dead hanging around her than she ever knew before. And as she explores that and comes to terms a little bit more with what it is, it may make her a little bit more powerful as a person. But is it going to make her lose sight of what her goals are? We're going to find out. One of the things I love about this book is it does always give you resources if you are dealing with trauma or PTSD on how you can handle that and who you can talk to. So this has been a really great series. There is there are trade paperbacks for those first few arcs of the story. Speaking of things that are a couple arcs in, we've got Dark Ride issue 10 from Image and the Skybound imprint. This is one of my favorite Joshua Williams books on the shelf right now. It is so good. It's basically what if Disney had wanted to create a horror park instead of the happiest place on earth. And I love that Joshua Williamson was like, I love horror, obviously. I've done so many horror stories, but I also really love Disney, and I kind of wanted to mix the two together. And in this story, Arthur Dante, who is essentially our Disney, has two children, one named Samhain, who goes by Sam to kind of hide that he's essentially just named Halloween, and his twin sister, who is actually just named Halloween. And they actually have a fight about that in this issue on how it's terrible to have the actual name. But they have found out that essentially their dad has made a lot of deals with some evil entities, and their theme park is not what they thought it was. And now, as this demonic park has kind of taken over their lives and taken over everybody's situation and demands some sacrifice, and some crazy things are going down, they're trying to put it back together. You know, Sam's like, hey, I didn't want any of this. I just wanted to do a good job running a theme park. And Halloween's like, you didn't have a choice. Like, this is who we are. This is how we were raised. Like, dad's evil, and everything he's built is evil, and you just gotta accept it, dude. And he's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm really curious to see what Josh's endgame is, because a lot of the things I thought he was building towards as the story has gone on, he's like taken that thing that you think, oh, you're building towards this moment, and just completely like ransacked it and gone in a different direction. So this is another one of those issues where I was like, oh, okay, so this is what we're gonna do. And Josh is like, no, I don't think it is. Good luck with that. So I feel kind of like Sam following along the story, where I'm like, I feel like we're finally making progress, and then all that progress is destroyed in the best way possible. A Legacy of Violence, issue 9 from Mad Cave. This is a very dark story about a guy who essentially has a guy show up to his surgery, his OR, because he's a surgeon, and he is just in this crazy state and is screaming about a unit 731 and all of this stuff that's dark and dangerous. And the guy's like, you know what? I'm going to investigate this. So he ends up joining like a Doctors Without Borders program, where he travels to another country, and he's investigating all of this stuff that's going on at the same time, just working as a surgeon. And we find out that there is essentially a Red Room style operation going on, and this guy is trying to get some new recruits, and it's either do what he wants or find yourself on the table. And this is another one where your twists and turns just kind of get worse and worse, and so much of that is so gross. I'm like trying not to trigger anybody with some of the crazy stuff that they do in this issue. This book should have a trigger warning if you are afraid of invasive or unelected surgeries, for sure, because there is a lot of it, especially in this issue. So this one is going to be a tough issue for those people who are triggered by that to read, because it gets pretty gruesome. Local Man, issue 9 from Image Comics. This is what if your favorite 90s superhero had grew up and it didn't work out as a superhero, and he gets sent home and finds out, just like everybody else, that it's not very easy to go home, especially not after he failed. You know, in his town, the people are mad at him, his parents are mad at him, nothing has gone well. And after the first arc, where he was told he couldn't be a superhero anymore, and he did some superheroing anyway, he kind of made some alliances in his town, and then he immediately destroyed them as the second arc started. But he has found out that there is a bunch of superheroes and supervillains and things that seem to kind of navigate to his town, and there's some kind of evil doings going on in a secret lair. And the thing that he has been figuring out over the last couple issues is the ties that there are to the town and to himself in ways that he didn't really necessarily want that to ever happen. And he's going to have to step up and really be a real, true superhero, and not kind of just the conceited guy who has that 90s bravado, if he's going to figure it out. One of the coolest things about this book is that you also always get a backup story. So you are getting 2 stories in every issue, and it flips over to do that. The first arc gave us backup stories of the characters from the superhero group that he was a part of, and kind of saw his time in that. The backup stories in this arc have been about his girlfriend back home, that what happened when he left her behind, and everything that she got into, and how that's kind of connected to his superhero story and to the villains that may have sprouted up since then. And so we are getting to the end. You know, we're like halfway through this arc. I think we probably have 1 or 2 more issues to wrap it up, but it's going to wrap up in some really big ways. And who knows if we'll wrap up the whole story at the end of this arc, because I feel like we're building towards like an ultimate climax where we could. But maybe they'll leave us on a big cliffhanger and we'll have a whole nother arc to really wrap things up. But we're definitely building some big stuff. World Tree, issue 7 from Image Comics. This is James Tynion's newest sci-fi thriller, I would guess. I'm gonna lean on sci-fi because it's very computer AI kind of problems. But this is about a group of people who developed some crazy stuff for the internet, and in the process figured out that there was a very, 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 very dark corner of the internet that could control people's minds and cause them to do a bunch of evil, terrible things, like kill everybody in their neighborhood. And so they tried to build something that would protect everybody from that. Well, didn't work out so well in the way they wanted, and now, years later, something that they built when they were teenagers, they're now having to deal with it all coming crashing down in their adulthood. And we have been following along as one young kid ended up finding that part of the internet and got into a mess of trouble because he killed a bunch of people. And now this investigation is ongoing with that group, with the FBI and the CIA, with the kid's brother. There are so many different parts that are moving at all times in this story, and we are just now starting to see, hey, this is possibly how this came to be. This is where we're going, and we're gonna find out, like, if there's a way to put the world back together again. And, you know, part of it is, like, we might have to break the internet in order to do it, and they're like, we've done it before, maybe we can do it again. It's a cyber thriller for sure. And if you are like one of those people who's like, I feel like there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet and it could be super dangerous, this book is gonna send you down so many rabbit holes that are just gonna make you even more nervous every day. Sirens of the City, issue 6 from Boom Studios. This is the end for now. At least the end of this story arc, possibly the end of the whole thing. But this is an urban fantasy story about a young girl in the 80s who finds out that she is pregnant, and she doesn't want the baby, and she doesn't know what to do about it, and her adopted parents are like, I can't believe you got pregnant, and they kick her out. So she goes to live on the streets of New York and ends up meeting somebody who's like, hey, let me show you around the city. Well, she finds out that the underground of the city is actually in an urban fantasy world where it's filled with vampires and incubus and succubus and sirens and all kinds of crazy mythological creatures, and she just happens to be one of them. And everything that she never knew about herself comes pouring out, and she ends up having all of these crazy connections and situations happening. And as we get to this issue, we are coming to that ultimate battle. And we are going to find out if she's able to really get what she wants out of this situation, and if she's able to save the day, save her family, figure out what that means to her, who family is going to be for her, and what she's going to build going forward if she does make it out of this. And so this issue is all nonstop, like, fight and figuring it out. And I like it because it is one of those where, like, as they're fighting, they're still kind of having that conversation of, like, what does this mean at the same time, which is really great. But if you're a fan of those urban fantasy stories where you put monsters and creatures and mythological beings in our modern society, you definitely want to check that one out. And I love that coloring. There's all black and white with those splashes of colors just for the magic. So good. Project Ryza from I Did It, issue 6 from Mad Cave. This is the wrap up of this as well, and this has basically been a more sci-fi version of an Indiana Jones adventure. This is all about a group of people who are going to investigate the lost train of gold that was supposed to be something that Nazi Germany had found. And in it, they end up finding out that there is all of the experiments that they had heard that were possible from the Nazis had actually happened. And so they are trying to figure out, like, what do we do with all this? Do we take it? Do we turn it in? Do we discover it as a find on an archaeological adventure? And all of that in the first, like, 3 pages before they find out that they are being chased by the bad guys. And so they have to actually fight through this, and they end up meeting multiple kinds of aliens and creatures along the way. And again, if you just sci-fi'd up even more so, extremely more so, an Indiana Jones story, you're kind of going to get this situation that they're going through in this issue. Again, this is the last one, and I love that it's like kind of got a challenge question at the end to the main character that is good for everybody to take home with them. Quest issue 5 from Image Comics. This is the story of a girl who ends up getting married to the person she was betrothed to, who she's actually fallen in love with. And her family kind of just sees it as 2 ruling parties coming together. And she's at her wedding day, 3 demons show up and they steal the prince, who is her husband. And she is not having that. And when they're like, oh, well, it's just a marriage of unity, so it doesn't really matter. We don't really need to go after him because now our nations are unified, so we don't really need either of you, prince or princess. We just needed y'all to get married. We're not going to do anything about it. And she's like, well, I'm going to do something about it because I actually really do love him, and he's my husband. So she goes off to this place in there between nations that the demons have infested, and is like, I'm going to find my husband. And she has been on this quest to find him over the last few issues. And as she has battled against the demon underling, she has finally started to make it to the point where she is facing off against actual demons, and she's so cool. I feel like this book is flying too far under the radar for how cool this lead character is. She doesn't take anybody's nonsense, but she's smart about what she's doing. She's doing the research and then fighting the fights. Like, she's doing all of it, and she's like doing it all for the person that she loves. And I just think it's really cool, and I think more people should be talking about this series and this character because she's definitely awesome. Speaking of awesome characters, Harriet Tubman Demon Slayer issue 5 from Massive. For those of you who like things like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer, where you take that historical figure and you put them in a setting where there's suddenly vampires and werewolves and things like that, you're going to love this book. It starts out originally in issue 1 with a group of slaves who are trying to get away from the place that they have been working, and they end up meeting Harriet Tubman along the way, and she's like, hey, I've got to kill these demons really fast, which end up being a bunch of vampires. And now she's like, I can help you. I can get you to a safe place. You just got to come with me. Well, the demons aren't really mad about, aren't really happy about the fact that Harriet Tubman is out there killing them. So they all meet up, and a demon lord essentially comes in and is like, hey, I will pay you all a ton of money if you can bring me the head of Harriet Tubman. And they're like, well, we all hate her, so sure. And so he puts out this call nationwide to all the demons of all the different kinds to go after Harriet Tubman. So now while she is on her adventure to take these people to freedom, she's also got like a mark on her from all these people coming after her. And in this issue, they have stopped at a place that is supposed to be a safe house. And they find out that the family that was supposed to be there and the family that are there are not quite the same. And this is their first inclination that there is a bounty on Harriet and that they're going to have to fight their way the rest of the way to freedom. And she's just so cool. I mean, Harriet Tubman is already a really, really cool person. And then you took a really, really cool person and you gave her a giant sword and had her just killing everybody that's a bad guy and demons and all these things at the same time. You just, like, how could you make Harriet Tubman cooler than she already was? We're gonna try. And they are definitely doing it in this book. So if you haven't checked it out yet, you should definitely check it out because it's super cool. Drive Like Hell, issue 4 from Dark Horse. This is the end of this story. And this is all about a man and a woman who rob a bank. And in the process, they're like, hey, we need a getaway car. And they find this really cool car. So they're like, we're going to jump into this one. And they end up taking it only to find out that it belongs to a demon who's really mad that they stole his car. And also the car has stolen property of an angel inside of it. So now the angel's really mad. So they have managed to make heaven and hell furious. And they're going to drive really fast to get away. This is like the real Fast and the Furious, basically. They have gone through everything. They fought against like televangelists. They fought against demons. And now they are coming on their major square down with heaven and hell to kind of figure out what it is they're going to have to do to get away. It's pure adventure. It's pure action. I mean, if you are a fan of Fast and the Furious, this is like the best book on the shelf for you to grab because it's literally just a guy in a car that's like, when he gets stuck in places, they're like, what are we going to do? Like, the demons are coming for us. And he's like, I'm going to drive this car. And you're like, you literally took it up a notch. Like, Vin Diesel drove out of the nose of a plane with a car, but you literally drove through like the gates of hell, and you had to one up it. I'm gonna take a drink of this water really fast. It's so bubbly. I just love it so much. All right. Up next, we've got Nightfall Double Feature Issue 4 with this amazing Chris Sheehan cover from Vault Comics. If you don't know, Vault's thing is that they are horror, fantasy, and what is the other? Oh my gosh, what is it? Just horror, fantasy, and what's the third thing that Vault does? Sci-fi. I was like, sci-fi. Right. I was like, it's sci-fi, but I don't think that's what they call it. But anyway, they have 3 really big pillars, and Nightfall is their horror imprint. And this is the first time we've had a title that actually is the name of the imprint actually getting like a flagship title. And in this, we've had a double feature. So unlike something like Creepshow, where we have 2 issues in every issue, but they're unrelated and they don't continue each week. This is actually 2 issues that have gone on for all 4 issues of the comic. So you just get a double feature like going to the movies. And the first feature is The Cemeterians, and it's written by Daniel Kraus, who wrote The Autumnal. And he is telling us a story about all of the bones that we've buried, all of the humans that we buried, all of their bones have basically piled up on top of each other, and the death of the world is not happy. And so they are like, hey, we're going to come back essentially for you all in the worst way possible. And bones just start appearing everywhere and then becoming like monsters. And these 2 people have been tasked to figure out how are we going to stop it, and is it possible? And we learn this is the wrap up, so we do kind of get to see how that happens. So I don't want to show you too much, but the art is super cool on that, and the story is amazing as always. I love it because you get this cute little intermission every time because you're at a double feature, so it's adorable. And then the second story is Denizen, and Denizen is about a family who is blended. They just, a mom and dad who are on their second marriages, who both have children, get married to each other, and they're on a family road trip to kind of figure out if they can learn to work together and just kind of have that moment where it's like, okay, this is where we become a family. Well, they end up stopping at a motel, and there's this weird trailer in there, and the mom gets sucked in, and essentially the family has to figure out a way to come together to save the mom. and the daughter or not. You know, that's the choice you have to make. This is where you find out if you're going to become the family that you're meant to be. And so we finally in this issue get the backstory of that couple meeting each other, and we kind of get to see the truth come out about a lot of the ways that the kids feel and everything as they work together to see that family life actually come into fruition or not. I love it. You get that Press Shann art on there, which I'm always a fan of everything they do. So I'm super happy to see that. But it was such a good story on both sides. Both of the features were really, really great. But I love the way that this horror version of a blended family coming together really worked out for the story. It was so good. Definitely check it out. You do need to, again, it's not an anthology, so you do need to read issues 1 through 4 to get the whole story for this, but you're getting 2 stories in every issue, which is super cool. Edenwood, issue 4 from Image Comics. This is your latest and biggest fantasy world adventure really coming out from Tony S. Daniel, who did Noctera with Scott Snyder. This is about a world where demons and witches have been in a fight together for a really long time, and every time their war extends past their boundaries, it starts to take over our boundaries, and parts of our world just kind of get sucked into it. And it's really crazy because it's depending on where you're standing, you could get sucked into a 100-year gap, because they're in this fantasy world, this Edenwood. And so in issue 1, a bunch of teenagers are out in the woods, and they end up getting sucked into the battle of the Edenwood. And they all end up at different times, and even some that are really close together. And so one of the guys is determined to figure out what happened to the love of his life. This is crazy. The love of his life. And so he ends up teaming up with a demon slayer, and becomes a demon slayer himself, and he's now trying to make his way through this story and figure out where this woman that he loves is. We also get to see little bits and pieces of both the past and the future as it kind of appears to us, because the Edenwood is something that kind of messes with time. We're able to kind of jump out of it for a second as readers and just see those different pieces of the puzzle. And I'm really curious to see if the whole thing ends up being some kind of illusion or something at the end, because every time we get a little bit more of the story, I'm like, wait a second, is none of this real? Is everything in here just an alternate vision that somebody's having? I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out. I also just really want him to find the love of his life, and I hope that it works out for him, because it doesn't seem like it's going very well. Beowulf, issue 4 from Comicsburg. This is a modernized retelling of the story of Beowulf, but we have a very, very reluctant hero. It starts out with a young girl and her cat, and the cat is basically like, hey, just so you know, I'm the guardian that's supposed to save the world from dragons and things like that, so you might want to join me as we pop over to find the hero that we have to send. And then they find him, and again, he's not the best. I think they even call him affable in the story, and he is just not really going anywhere in life. And they're like, hey, you're destined to be this hero. It's in your lineage. You have to go fight the dragon. I'm sorry. This is your job. And they train him for half an issue on what he's going to have to do, which is definitely not enough. And then now he is actually facing against this dragon, and it's definitely not enough. He is not prepared. It's not one of those where it's like, hey, you're the chosen one, and then immediately picks up the sword and is like, haha, I'm good at this. No, they're trying to watch the progress of this, and they're like, we might actually have to intervene because this guy is just absolutely terrible at this. I love it. It's great to see some new adaptations of Beowulf, but also I just love the fact that we get a talking cat, and I think all books should include one. So... And they have that great paper stock for the covers. I love when small presses just have that thick cover stock. Scython, Volume 2, Issue 3 from Image Top Cow. This is one of those where if you didn't read Volume 1, you have to grab that trade paperback and get that, or the single issues of the first volume, because you will not know what is going on at all if you do not read the first volume. But this is the story of a guy who ends up getting a power that allows him to siphon other people's emotions. he is an EMT, so for him, he's like, this is great because I can finally truly help people who are in pain by taking it away from them. But he kind of gets to the point where he's doing it, whether or not that's something that people want. And it ends up not really being a great thing for him. And he's got some ultimate battles in Volume 1 that really change things. But in Volume 2, we've learned that there is a prophecy and there is a whole universe, essentially, of these people who can siphon these emotions. And he has to go on this adventure to figure out where he falls in the ability to save the world based on his siphoning skills. And in this issue, we get some hard conversations about whether or not the world can be saved and whether or not he's actually even deserving of his power, which I think is cool because we don't see a lot of times where like the hero of the story that we're following is the one that they're like, maybe you're not that great. So it's kind of fun in this issue to see somebody actually say that for once, and kind of now we have to build out from there. American Psycho, issue 3 from Sumerian. If you are a fan of the American Psycho movie, you should probably be reading this comic. The story follows the detective who is investigating Patrick Bateman's murders. I was going to say, what's the best way to say that? But let's just call it what they are. They are crazy murders. And I should have probably looked at the page before I put it up there because this definitely goes through a lot of the American Psycho moments in this issue. So he's the detective. We actually follow along. We get to see initially, yes, he's just watching Patrick and trying to learn like what it is that he's doing and why he's, you know, like watching him kill all these people and kind of trying to figure out the whys and the hows of it. What's interesting seeing it in this light is we actually do get to see a lot of the scenes from the movie start to play out and why the detective feels the way he does about Patrick Bateman. And so in this issue particularly, we're at the point where he's already killed Allen. Is it Paul Allen? He's already killed Allen. Yeah, Paul Allen. He's already killed him, and he is investigating, like the detective is investigating all of that, and we get to the point where he's like, wow, I kind of actually really think this guy is super cool. Like, I love investigating what he's doing and where he's going, and I can actually show you this because, like I said, you do get some of the scenes from the movie in there. And I want you know, people who are fans of the movie, I've had, like, at the very beginning when issue 1 came out, a couple of fans of the movie were like, I don't really know because it's not the movie, and I just kind of wanted the movie. And a lot of people are like, I kind of like that we're getting a different take on the movie. And you definitely do in this one, and it kind of spins it a little bit. But if you are, again, if you're an American Psycho fan, this is going to be a great, like, spin-off, essentially, that, what's the word? Not like a requel, because it's just from another perspective. It's just that. It's just a flip of the POV, essentially. But at the same time, I'm going to hold this up still while I'm talking about it. At the same time, that is the background story to a fact that we keep fast forwarding because we also have a future story. And so there's, at the end of each issue or the beginning of each issue, we see a little bit of something that takes place in the future. And this is the first issue that's kind of connected where that future and past lie together. So, you know, keep reading. Issue 3, always the twist. The Sire, Lost in Time, issue 3 from Drin Productions. This is the story of a superhero who has the ability to or the requirement, it's not even the ability, he didn't choose this life. He was given the ability to take down people who are not supposed to have superpowers. Essentially, a lot of people on the earth got a bunch of superpowers, and he was given the job of going after them and determining, are you worthy of the powers? If you are, you're able to keep them. If you're not, his suit will automatically cause him to fight you and take your powers from you and absorb them himself. And so he has been doing that against his will to the point where he's like lost his job. So he's working at McDonald's now, and he's just struggling with all kinds of stuff. His brother and his brother's girlfriend were a part of the situation initially, and it's kind of been one of those things where like his brother's completely forgotten everything that happened. His memory's wiped, but the girlfriend knows, and she's the local Lois Lane essentially, and so she's trying to cover for him, but she's not doing a very good job of covering. Anyway, he's in this issue going up against some people he's already fought, because in issue 2 he ended up going against a former past villain, and it led open a can of worms that may very well see him facing his own destruction, and we are going to see exactly where that leads him after some big moments at the end of this issue that kind of take him out of the game in a way that I wasn't expecting for sure. So it's nice I love when superheroes have a little bit different of a story to them, and the fact that it's not his choice to be a hero, and like his suit just automatically appears on him when something's happening. So it's like, hey, I'm in the middle of this conversation with my boss, and he's trying to tell me like if I miss another day of work, I'm gonna get fired. And then something's happening, and like the suit just starts like glowing out of his, like growing out of his eyeballs and across his chest, and he's like, I gotta go, like fire me, sorry. It's a cool way to do it. Squish and Squash, issue 2 from Keenspot. This is an adorable all-ages book. In issue 1, Squish and Squash were training to be rescuers. They really wanted to have the job where they could go out and save people. And in this issue, Squish and Squash are given a job to go to a place where an oil spill has happened, and they rescue all the people off the oil rig because that's what the request that comes in is to do. And then they're like, okay, well, we rescued all the people, like let's just enjoy this nice vacation spot that they sent us to. And what they don't realize is that the oil spill itself is actually damaging the fish village that is underneath the water, and it has been for years now, and the oil company isn't doing anything to stop it. And so Squish and Squash are like, even though that wasn't what we were called here to do, maybe we need to get involved in that. And you get to see them kind of take on the little oil tycoon and help all of the fish fight their battle in like the most adorable way. And then they have a really nice thing about how to save the ocean at the end. So this is a great comic to give any kids who love marine life and wanting to save the ocean. Orcs, The Gift, issue 2 from Kaboom. This is the latest volume of Orcs. You don't have to read all of the Orcs volumes to follow along. They're kind of just separate adventures about a group of orcs, and they are very kid-friendly. And so if you have kids who are into D&D or things like that and they're looking for something fun that they can read, this one is definitely from the kid imprint of Boom Studios. And in this volume, we've got some of the kids who just want to hear stories from the Great Mother, but we have our group of ragtag orcs who are known as thieves usually, are sent out to go and get a magic sword that will save all of the orcs from the evil sorcerer who has been attacking them. They have to go get the sword fixed, and when they go out to get the sword fixed, they end up, of course, having to go on a ridiculous adventure because they get there and they get to the dwarf place where they're going to fix the sword, and the dwarf's like, we're too busy, we can't help you, and I don't want to help you anyway because I'm still mad at you from the last time. And they're like, well, what can we do? And they're like, well, we have a gnome problem, so you can stop the gnomes from attacking us. And they're like, okay, fine. And they're like, well, if we stop, they go in and they're fighting the gnomes, and the gnomes are like, well, we'll leave if you do this. And then it's like, okay, and they go to do that, and it's like, well, we'll leave if you do this. And so they just end up on one of those follow the bouncing ball kind of adventures to help everybody, which is super cute because that's all they ever really want to do is the right thing and just helping people. And somehow it makes Orcs the most adorable character at the same time. But if you haven't read these yet, again, they're really great for young people and who love fantasy adventures and are looking for something a little bit thicker to read and a little bit more of a story. The Agent, issue 2 from Ablaze Comics. This is about a woman who is a detective, and she is investigating what she thinks is a drug problem in her town, and she chases a guy onto the subway, and she thinks that he splashes her with a bunch of drugs. But we as readers get to find out that there's actually a secret society amongst us of magical people, and there is a lot of magic trafficking and fighting going on between nations. And she kind of gets sucked into that, and she's the only one who can see it out of her group. So she's like, they must have drugged me with all of the drugs that they had. Like, I saw the drugs, I saw the bad guys, I saw them do all this stuff. And they're like, none of that happened. You should stop telling people that. And in this issue, we see her have that first meeting with somebody from the other side who's like, hey, it's all real. You're not crazy. We can help you out with this, but you're going to have to come and investigate this. And she tries to do just that, and it does not go very well. If you're into detective stories and you're into magic, this is going to be a great one for people who are fans of things like Shadow Service or Black Magic, that are going to be a little more on the spy thriller side, but still have that magic blend to it. Skeeters, issue 2 from Mad Cave. Mosquitoes are awful and terrible, and this book doesn't help you want to like them in any capacity. This is the story of science gone wrong. We find out in this issue that what it is that there was a group of people who went to a moon mission. They got some parasites. They brought them back. Parasites have been in a lab and everything's been fine until now. And now we have giant mosquito-like creatures taking over the entire area, and we're going to have to fight some big giant bugs and some other big giant things as we go into this battle, and it gets worse and worse. But if you are into all of those like B horror movies where it's just really, really ridiculous, over the top monster creatures that you're like, okay, we all know that this is going to play out in like the worst way possible, and then they're going to have to like come up with a ridiculous solution. Skeeters is that that book for you. This is like a 70s horror movie in the most cheesy, wonderful way possible. And I just love how ridiculous these creatures are, and I love watching them try to fight them, and I think it's great. And you've got like a great cast of characters, because you've got a sheriff that's trying to prove herself to the mayor, the mayor, and of course you've got the mayor from Jaws, essentially, who's like, no, we're going to keep going with everything. And then you got the girl that's the sheriff trying to prove herself, and then you got the one guy who's like her ex, who's like, oh, well, we didn't work out because of this and this and this. And then he's with his best friend who's just high all the time, and it's exactly the cast of characters that you would anticipate with this, and it's fantastic. You should check it out if you love those kinds of movies. Duke, issue 2 from Image Comics Skybound imprint and the Energon universe. If you are not following along and you don't know this, that's totally okay. But I'm here to tell you that G.I. Joe and Transformers are now sharing a universe called the Energon universe at Image Skybound Comics. It is a huge thing that kicked off with Void Rivals that launched the world, and then Transformers, had our very first appearance of Duke from the G.I. Joe universe in it. And now, because of that, we have this great Duke spinoff where he's having some problems. In Transformers issue 2, Duke was in the middle of the sky and was hit down by some Transformers, and actually got to see Transformers go from jet planes to giant robots, and nobody is acknowledging that happened. They're basically treating him like he's a crazy person and essentially kicking him out of the military, but not really, because, they want to like keep their tabs on him at the same time. Well, he's decided he's going to investigate it on his own if nobody's going to follow up and let him know what's actually happening. And so he has gone rogue, and in this issue they have sent the best of the best, the elite Joe operatives, after him, essentially, to try to bring him back in, and we're going to figure out exactly where that's going to lead him as the series unfolds. I'm really curious to see where this goes, because Joshua Williamson is writing both Duke and Cobra Commander. And so I want to see how much of this G.I. Joe universe that he is going to bring together, and how quickly. And then, of course, this is completely, totally, you have to know what's going on in Transformers to know that Duke has appeared there, and that's what this whole thing is about. This universe is getting crazy. It's building up bigger and bigger as every issue comes along, and it's going to be insane. If you were a kid in the 80s, this is your time. This is the time to jump in, because your characters are crossing over in comic books right now in the biggest way I've ever seen. Eden Frost, issue 2 from Mad Cave. What a great Mad Cave week, man. Eden Frost, issue 2. This is the story of two kids who live in a small village that is destroyed by Russian soldiers right after the war, I believe. But it is, they are destroyed, their village is destroyed, and they are trying to figure out what they're going to do, because now they are the only remaining people, and they have headed out into the snow. And everywhere they turn, there's more soldiers and more people threatening their lives. And in the end of issue 1, they found a woman found them, I guess I should say. And they figured out that she had a cabin, and so they have asked if they could stay with her, and they're willing to work for whatever it is that they need to do to stay. But of course, the older brother is like, I'm going to do whatever it takes, because I promised my family I would protect my little sister. And my little sister is like, no, we need to get away from this, and we need to find a place to be safe and to live the life that we should live with our people. And he's like, we have to do what we have to do. Meanwhile, there is a supernatural element to this, because there is the hint that they have possibly awoken the golem to come and protect them. And we have only seen bits and pieces of that, and they aren't really sure if they're really seeing it. Every time they think that they're like, oh, something happened and there's this extra strength or extra force, they're like, that can't possibly be true. What's going on? I just am going to cry. I know for a fact that when this book gets to the end, I'm going to cry, and I'm probably going to cry like at least 4 points along the way, but it is very well written. And even like the story in this one is in issue 2 was so beautiful, because the woman in the cabin, she lost her husband and she still thinks he's coming back from the war, but because she's so far out, she hasn't heard that the war is over. And so and you learn what that actually really is, and like her whole story and where that goes as it unfolds with the kids staying there. You get more and more of that story, and it's so well done and so beautiful, and you're just gonna cry. Just come to cry, because it's so good. Moon Man, issue 1 from Image and the Black Market Narrative Publishing imprint, and Kid Cudi. This is Kid Cudi's first ever comic book. So if you are a fan of the rapper Kid Cudi, he has jumped into writing comics. He is a huge comic book fan. He was naming all kinds of comics that he was into, and he was talking about the launch of this, and I was like, I don't know that I've even read like half of the books he just threw down. Like, he is super into comics, and you can tell with this story. But whether or not this will end up becoming something that connects to our massive verse in any way, we'll find out someday. But this is, about a guy who was sent up to the moon, and he was on this mission, and when they come back, or when they're out there, something happens, and some time disappears, the tapes get erased, all this stuff. Nobody knows what happens. None of the guys that were on the space mission, like none of the people can remember anything that happens. So the government's kept them all locked up while they kind of investigate what's going on. Well, they finally release these people, and it's like not real releasing, kind of releasing, but he's like, hey, I'm going home. I'm going to like see my younger sibling. We're going to figure all this stuff out. And weird stuff starts happening. A lot of really crazy things. He starts having these weird visions. Some, maybe some powers start developing. There's some stuff that's definitely going to go down with him and what's happening. But we also find out that like the world changed while he was gone. And maybe not all at the same time. Like it wasn't ever a great place to be in the first place, but it's gotten a lot worse, and his little brother is kind of tied up into a whole bunch of stuff, and the more he tries to protect his little brother, the more these weird powers and visions start coming up, and it's gonna be a good story. I don't know if it'll actually end up connecting and being a part of the Radiant Black universe. It doesn't have a massive verse logo on it, so I don't think it will. But you know what? Dead Lucky didn't start out like that. But as far as I know, I think you should be good, because we're kind of dealing with the moon and not with radiant powers and things like that. But who knows? Anything could happen. Kyle Higgins is connected to the project, so it'd be kind of cool if eventually like one of those crossovers did have it in there. But so far, I really liked this issue, and I think you would too. So if you need, a good story and you like Kid Cudi, definitely pick that one up. All right, Disney launched their next story through their new Disney Dynamite imprint, and it is Lilo and Stitch. This is the first non-villain story we've had. We had Scar, we had Hades, we had Cruella, we had Maleficent, but now we are jumping over to the heroes, and I love that we started with Lilo and Stitch, because Ohana means family, and that means nobody gets left behind. And it's so cute. And that is literally family not getting left behind is, as always, the plot of this story. We have Lilo and Stitch getting some wires crossed. We have somebody who's needs to learn how to be essentially like a crazy villain kind of situation. And they want to find Stitch because Experiment 626 is the best way to figure out how to be wild and crazy. And so they are coming after Stitch. And in the process of trying to steal him, Lilo figures out that something's gone wrong. She goes after him. They try to get the whole gang back together. Every character from the story from the movie is in this story, which is super cool. We get to see how they've all stayed together and how they've connected over the course of the time since the movie. And as always, when Lilo and Stitch try to do what they need to do to protect each other, the wires get crossed and the situation becomes messier than it needs to be. And so we've got a Stitch on the loose at the end of the story in a giant city he's never been to before, and we've got Lilo in some major situation that only Stitch will probably be able to help her out from. So if you're a fan of Lilo and Stitch, you're gonna love this. It hits all the same beats from the movie. It's got all the lovable characters. You gotta jump in. It's so good. And there's foils and everything for it. Oh my gosh, it was such a great launch. All right, I got a stupid amount of picks of the week because I love comic books. So first up is Rumpus Room issue 5 from AWA. This is the end of Rumpus Room, so it's actually in the picks of the week just because I love the entire series, and I'm picking the series as a pick of the week. But if you don't know this story, this is about a man who's a one-percenter who, whenever he doesn't like somebody, he just locks them up in a room in his basement, and he has this point where like little music plays that's really happy, and each person in the basement essentially has to come together and vote somebody off the island, and that person is taken from the basement and used for nefarious purposes. I won't tell you what, because that is such a great twist for the story. And in issue 1, a woman comes to the house who is a detective, and she is determined to fight against this man and save her sister who has gone missing, who she thinks is in this rumpus room, and she ends up finding a way to get out, only to have to do it over and over again kind of situation. We are going to see how that plays out, and everything else in the book is a spoiler on how that actually happens, but it's Mark Russell. I love Mark Russell's writing. I love everything he has to say. I love how satirical and hilarious he is when he says it, and this one, he doesn't even skirt around what he's trying to say. He just says it all over the place, but it's still hilarious as you go along. So read this book. It's great. Jill and the Killers, issue 1 from Oni Press. This was such a fun, like, teen horror kind of story. One of my favorite books is There's Someone Inside the House. I love teen horror, and this one does it so well. It is the story of Jill, who's a young girl who has basically missed school for an entire year because something happened and her mom, who was a detective, went missing. And at this point, she's been gone for a year, so everybody's like, your mom's probably dead. So Jill finally is going back to school for the first time and is trying to reassociate with her friends and the people she was connected to before. And she finds out there's new people in the group, and everybody in school is obsessed with true crime and horror and like being detectives, and they're all into these true crime board games that you can order, box mystery games, I guess, just they're not board games. And so you get a mystery box, and in your box there's a crime that you're supposed to solve, and it's kind of like dinner theater role playing, and the kids are like, we all want to do this, it's a thing that we have to do. And so she's like, well, I'll order it. Like, I wouldn't be in the group. I'm totally in. And they're like, why would you want to do that? Like, your mom's missing. Like, you're really, like, this is not a thing that you should do. And she's like, no, I'm going to do it. And so she orders a box. A box shows up at her house. They start trying to investigate the situation. And it might not be all fun and games like they thought it was going to be. And we get a big twist halfway through the book that leads us to what our story is going to entail. And it's just fun. It's well written. It's super well done all the way through. And if you like detective stories, you're going to love it. If you like those kind of like almost meta horror where it's like one thing is you're like know the genre and the genre knows that it's that genre and it keeps going with the story, you're gonna really enjoy this book. But absolutely, what a great start again from Oni Press. Up next we've got Somna, issue 2 from Distillery, and this beautiful book that Becky Cloonan and Tula Lute are writing and drawing together. I love that they switch on and off. I'm going to show you what I can of the inside of this book. This is the story of a woman whose husband, it's back in like the Salem witch trials times, and it is a woman whose, I can show you this page, whose husband is the witch investigator for the town. He's supposed to be the one that finds all the witches and puts them on prosecution. And at the beginning of issue 1, they burn a witch at the stake, and everybody's on edge because, of course, if you have one witch in your town, you probably have more. And they are worried that another one is coming. Well, our main character starts having these crazy dreams about a mysterious dark stranger, and she doesn't know where he came from, and she doesn't know why he chose her, but these dreams are very, very, I can't show you the pages of the dreams kind of situation to tell you a little bit about it. I can show you this one, just so you can see Tula Lete's art too, but it's very sensual and very adult and very wonderful. And as this woman kind of falls more into that, she's also doing a little bit investigation of some situations going on in her town on her own. And at the end of issue 1, her husband leaves town, and so she's kind of left to it all by herself, and that she falls more and more in this issue into the situation. And is she giving herself over to the devil? Is she just actually a woman who thinks that she should have some freedoms and passion and happiness in her life? We're going to find out, because it's only a 3-issue series, so you've only got 1 issue left, which I think is a giant shame. I think this should be an ongoing series where Tula Lete and Becky Cloonan just draw the most beautiful book of all time, because it's gorgeous and it's wonderful, and you should read it if you're over the age of 18. And lastly, Dear Editor, issue 1 from Mad Cave. I already told you, if you watched the live vibe, that this was a spoiler alert, that this was going to be in my picks of the week. And I'm so happy that you're here to hear me tell you why, because it is so good. And I actually suggested this to a couple of people early on in the week, like it was in their boxes on Wednesday, and by Saturday, a couple days later, somebody had already come back to tell me that they read Dear Editor and they needed to add it to their pull list because it's one of their new favorite books. And then a couple other people were like, I also already read it. Thank you so much for suggesting this. This book is great. Add it to my pull list. And I was like, yes, we are on. This is about a deer whose name is Bucky, which is the tongue-in-cheekness that you get out of this story. You get little deer jokes every once in a while, but Bucky is an investigative reporter, and he's the editor, hence the name, of the investigative journalist, like, news desk area. And a case comes across his desk, and Bucky is like, okay, there's something fishy going on. I'm going to look into it. And in the process of looking into it, he finds some truth. And then he finds some more truth. And then he finds some more truth. And then the people in town get really mad that Bucky is finding the truth. And so Bucky kind of essentially just becomes a detective. And we get to see Bucky tearing up this town, trying to find all of the information, solve the case, prove what's going on. It is actually very serious, even though you get like the little tongue-in-cheek jokes. It's actually just a serious, almost crime noir kind of detective story. But because he's an investigative reporter, the prose of the story has to be written like super strongly, and it is. It hits it on every beat. You know, you've got this great art, you've got the cool blue tones, you've got the jokes that you need, because we're like acknowledging that this is the only anthropomorphic animal in this entire series. You get the great detective story, and you get all-star writing. Like you just get it. You get what you need to do. Way to go to this creative team for making this awesome first issue. I cannot wait to see what goes on. We're getting a incredible level of detective stories recently out of all the publishers, and I'm kind of happy to see that that's the genre that we're pushing right now. And of course, you know, it's going to culminate in Dick Tracy coming out in April, which is super great, also from Mad Cave. But I love that we're really, really going into the detective stuff, because I think it works so well for comic books, because you can kind of see clues sometimes before the characters in the story like actually notice them. And so I love it, because as a reader, it's a great way for us to be active in the role. And when you do it well, you get really great stories like Dear Editor. So what a great start. All right, I'm going to fly through the other books that are in stock this week as we wrap this up. We've got Carnage issue 3 from Marvel. DC Power kicks off this year's Black History Month celebration from DC, so we will have all of their covers that are coming out as well for a celebration of that. But this is your anthology of great stories to kind of celebrate Black creators and Black characters at DC Comics. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu issue 2 of their Gang War title. If you're following along with the Gang War story, you've got about a month left of titles coming out for that, so make sure you're still picking them up. We've got House of Slaughter's Pen and Ink. These are the black and white versions of the stories from Boom Studios, and you get to have a recreation of Chris Sheehan's incredible cover. I love that so much. Philadelphia, issue 33 from Image Comics. We thought it was over, but it is not. Marvel also kicking off their Black History Month celebration with Marvel Voices Legends. This is their anthology that also focuses on Black creators and characters and celebrates them. Spine-tingling Spider-Man, issue 4. Power Girl issue. This is Power Girl Uncovered. So this is a celebration of all the cool covers that we've had for Power Girl this year. DC's been doing a lot of those. Trinity Special. This is all of the beats that we've had so far that feature Trinity, which is Wonder Woman's daughter from the future, and we do get to see a little bit more story for that. So if you didn't pick that up, this is a great, it's like her first official title. Kind of. Avengers Incorporated, issue 5. This is the end of the series. I know you all loved it. It did wrap up at 5. If you love books, buy them. If you love them, pre-order them. If you love them, sign up for your pull list. Everybody I know that said they liked this book told me, man, I heard that book was canceled. I was really enjoying it. I should have bought the issues when I had the chance. If you don't want to see your favorite series get canceled, buy the series, because they don't know that you like them to keep making them if you're not buying them. So that's your soapbox for the day. Dead X-Men issue 1 is a part of our Fall of X. Wolverine issue 42, also part of your Fall of the House of X. Spider-Boy issue 3 is out this week. There was some great Wolverine homage, the covers that they're doing for the Wolverine anniversary. There was a really cool Spider-Man 300 for that this week. Miguel O'Hara Spider-Man 2099. This is issue 5 of the series, which I think is the last one of that as well. King Spawn issue 30 from Image Comics. There's a lot of Spawn stuff coming soon with that 350. Secret Wars issue 3. This is the newest Secret Wars. There have been many. Incredible Hulk issue 8. Speaking of those Wolverine 50th anniversary homage covers. So they're taking all the great moments in Marvel history and putting Wolverine into them. Alan Scott Green Lantern issue 4 from DC. You're getting all of your JSA members with titles right now. It's super cool. I hope we keep going and give even more of the JSA people titles. Avengers Twilight issue 2. We just had issue 1 last week, and issue 2 is already here. Batman Offworld issue 3. One of the books that I had so many people requesting this week that I didn't know had a big following, and I was like, again, add it to your pull list. You gotta tell people you love it. Batman and Robin's annual for this year, to keep that series moving on. And then Batman, Superman's World Finest, also its annual issue, kicking off that this round of the story. I know that there's a cover that's coming out really soon that everybody's really excited for that has Shatner on it, so make sure also that you told your story you want that, because that order already happened. We have so much, like I said, going on this week. We hope that you're going to stop by and come hang out with us. New comics release on Wednesdays, as always. Don't forget, Wednesday night at 7, we have our Teen Plus workshop. That's 15 years old and up. If you want to come and learn how to write your own stories, put them into comic form, we're going to be doing that on Wednesday night, so please feel free to come join us. And then, of course, Saturday morning, Story Splunkers, and Saturday night at 7, meet us at Askura for our Bat Family takeover of Askura. See Matt play, see our friends in the losing game play, as well as Idle Moves and Georgie. It's going to be an awesome time. Come hang out with us, and until then, happy reading, everyone. Bye!